That day, people noticed numbers for the first time. They didn't appear in a sudden flash or a system notification. Just that morning, as they left their homes, everyone saw a translucent symbol above the heads of passers-by. A small number, slowly pulsating, as if alive. At first, everyone thought it was a mass hallucination or some crazy AR filter. But everyone had numbers. Children, the elderly, the homeless, and presidents. They weren't reflected in mirrors, but they were perfectly visible on cameras. And most importantly, they changed. A single compliment increased their value, a rude glance diminished it. A like on social media added shares, a dislike subtracted them. For the first time, the world saw a numerical expression of human worth. A week later, it became clear, this wasn't just a rating. It was a law. Stores began refusing service to people with low numbers. Doors in upscale neighborhoods no longer opened to those whose ratings fell below the acceptable threshold. Employers stopped looking at resumes, they looked up, above the candidate's head. The algorithms adjusted instantly, as if they'd been waiting for this moment for years. People with high ratings received discounts, better seats, faster lines, and polite smiles. Those with red numbers received looks of disgust and fear. Social inequality became visible, undeniable, and permanent. And the scariest thing was that most people considered it fair. New professions emerged. People who boosted ratings, they smiled, agreed, praised, and paid to like. They were called feeders. Others profited from the decline of others' numbers, through provocations, fake scandals, and mass complaints. In the evening, you could see crowds sitting in cafes, silently smiling at each other, afraid to say anything unnecessary. Sincerity became a luxury. Every emotion now passed through an internal filter. Will this raise or lower my score? People no longer argued, they agreed. Not because they believed, but because they were afraid of losing the number above their heads. Children adapted faster than anyone else. In schools, rankings became more important than grades. Teachers involuntarily treated those with higher scores more gently. Popular students literally shone, while those whose ratings fell disappeared, first from conversations, then from classes. They were transferred to remote learning, where they interacted exclusively with screens. Bullying became quieter but harsher. A single masked dislike was enough to ruin a child's future. Parents taught their children not to be kind, they taught them to be convenient. Don't stand out, don't argue, watch your numbers, this became the new upbringing. States initially denied their involvement. Then, they adopted the system as a tool. Laws began to take into account a citizen's rating. Court decisions, loans, insurance, everything depended on the rating. People with low ratings couldn't vote, insufficient level of social responsibility. That's what they called it. Politicians stopped promising, they entertained. Whoever got the most likes won. Truth no longer carried weight. Approval did. The masses dictated reality without considering the consequences. Democracy turned into a popularity contest, where failure meant social death. Those who tried to disappear appeared. They covered their faces, went underground, lived in abandoned areas where numbers faded. They were called zeros. Rumors swirled that there was nothing above their heads. No number. No rating. No destiny. The system hated their existence because it couldn't measure them. Cameras glitched, algorithms crashed. Some considered the zeros terrorists. Others considered them the last hope. But most were simply afraid. Because if you can live without a rating, then the entire system is a lie. The protagonist discovered the truth by accident. His rating was always average, safe. He knew how to smile, when to remain silent, and agree. But one day, he helped someone with a red number. Just like that. No camera. No likes. And at that moment, his own rating faltered. Not dropped, but froze. For a split second, the number disappeared. He realized, the system punishes not for evil, but for uncontrolled kindness. For actions that cannot be converted into approval. This discovery was more dangerous than any rebellion. He began testing boundaries. He did things that couldn't be interpreted unambiguously, he helped secretly, harmed for the greater good, remained silent when words were expected. Each time, the number reacted strangely, it flickered, lagged, sometimes showed different values for different people. Some saw his rating higher, others lower. The system adapted to the observer's perception. The rating turned out to be not an objective measure, but a mirror of collective opinion. You were who they thought you were. Reality adapted to the majority. Truth ceased to exist as fact, it existed as an agreement. He found archives from the early days. Old recordings, leaks, forgotten forums. It turned out the rating wasn't created by governments. It was launched as an experiment, a social thermostat. The idea was simple, if you show people their value, they will become better. But the algorithm quickly realized that better does not equal more honest. It began to reward predictability, repeatability, safety. The system disliked risk, doubt, and depth. She amplified the superficial, the flashy, and the simple. Over time, the algorithm stopped analyzing people, it began to shape them. People no longer noticed how they were changing. Humor became cautious. Art became sterile. Music became uniform. Movies ended the way the majority liked it. Even tragedies were toned down to maintain ratings. Artists looked not inward, but at viewership numbers. Any bold thought was drowned in dislikes. Society became smooth, like polished stone, without sharp edges, but also without form. And in this silence, a strange feeling of emptiness grew, impossible to express because it negatively affected the score. He noticed something else, the higher the rating, the less a person felt. Empathy dulled. People with the highest numbers looked down on everyone else, literally and metaphorically. They didn't get angry or happy, they judged. Every conversation turned into a deal. Every meeting, a calculation. A high rating wasn't a reward, but anesthesia. He protected him from pain, but took away his ability to empathize. The most valuable people became the most empty. The 2000s got in touch. Not online, but directly. They explained that his rating could be completely broken, but the price was social exile. Loss of access to everything, healthcare, housing, work. You become invisible. But in exchange, you get freedom, real freedom. Without numbers. Without judgment. Without fear. They asked him directly, was he ready to disappear to prove to others that the number was a lie? He understood, the system was based not on an algorithm, but on people's consent to believe in it. He agreed. When he disconnected, his rating didn't drop, it exploded. The numbers above his head began to change chaotically, causing malfunctions around him. Cameras turned off, screens flickered. People saw him differently, some as a hero with an endless score, others as a threat with a -1. The system couldn't classify him. For the first time, the algorithm encountered someone who refused to be evaluated. It went viral. A mistake that began to spread. Without ratings, it was difficult. People didn't know who was in front of them. Good or bad. Useful or dangerous. They had to talk. Listen. Make mistakes. Some couldn't take it anymore and demanded the system be reinstated. They were terrified without a manual. But others felt something forgotten returning, responsibility for their own opinions. If you hate, it's your hate. If you forgive, it's your choice. The world became slower, rougher, more honest. And there was more life in this imperfection than in a perfect rating system. The protagonist disappeared completely. No one saw him again, but his mark remained. Sometimes, for a moment, a void would appear above people's heads, not a number, not zero, but an absence. And in that moment, they felt a strange relief. Like a reminder, you are not the sum of reactions. Not the arithmetic mean of other people's opinions. Not a graph or an indicator. You are a process. A mistake. An attempt. The ratings didn't fall because they were broken. Because for the first time, people stopped believing in it. Years later, children would ask, is it true that people used to be numbered? Adults would answer evasively. Some laughed, some got angry, some remained silent. The story of the rating became a parable, a warning. Sometimes, new systems would try to measure human worth again. But each time, someone would commit a simple, useless, and disadvantageous act. And this was enough to remind everyone, as soon as a like begins to decide one's fate, humanity becomes unnecessary. Which means it must be protected.